Hello and welcome to Max Tutorial. Thank you for clicking to watch this video. If you haven't already, kindly click on the subscribe button to follow up on updates on the channel. I'm Cecilia Markway. Today's topic is formula. Happy viewing. Today we'll be covering formula, its definition, range, functions, cell referencing, and range name. A formula is an expression which calculates the value of a cell or cells. In the example below, we have a formula starting out with an equal to, referencing a cell named H1 plus cell H2 plus cell H3. Range are consecutive cells or group of cells called together. In the example, we have B2 to B10 as well as A1 to A7. We identify ranges with a column in between the cell references. So if you have a cell reference that has a column between two cell address, it is identified as a range. Functions are inbuilt formula in Excel. A function syntax is displayed below. Equal to function name, open parenthesis, arguments separated by comma, then close parenthesis. Depending on the function name, it could have just one argument or several arguments. Here we have equal to sum, open parenthesis, B1, comma. Here we have a range because there's a column in between to D5, comma, E4. So the sum is the function name, B1 is an argument, D2 to D5 is an argument, E4 is an argument, and our parentheses. Cell referencing. We have relative referencing, absolute referencing, mixed referencing, and 3D referencing. Relative reference, we don't attach any symbol to the cell address. We just call it as it is. We have A1 or F3 to F5. Remember that F3 to F5 is a range. In absolute referencing, there's a $ before the column letter and before the row number. You have $A, $1. Here also we have $F, $3, colon, $F, $5. In mixed referencing, we either have the $ before the column letter or before the row number, unlike absolute referencing where the $ is both on the column letter and the row number. 3D referencing has to do with referencing across sheets. We're going to depict these one after the other in the practical class. Range name is a descriptive label assigned to one or more cells for referring to them in a formula. Something particular about range name, it must start with a letter, must not contain space. Those are compulsory. This is the practical section. We have sales report 2016. I'm going to start out with formula. I'll click on the cell B8, type equal to, click on the cell B3, a plus sign, B4, a plus sign, B5, a plus sign, B6, a plus sign. I could as well type the cell rather than clicking on the cell. We have B7, hit on Ctrl Enter to remain on the same cell. It adds up the total sales for January. To do the same for February, I'm going to use sum function. I'll click on the cell C8, start out with equal to the function name sum, open parenthesis, type cell C3, a comma, C4, a comma, click on C5, a comma, C6, a comma, C7, and close my parenthesis, hit on Ctrl Enter. We have the sum total of sales in February. I'm going to depict the use of range in both formula and function and the effect it has. First and foremost, I'll start with function. Start out with equal to sum, open parenthesis. The first cell is C3, comma. Instead of calling the other cells one after the other as we did earlier, I'm going to write C4, colon. The last cell data for January is C7, then close the parenthesis, Ctrl Enter. It does the same summation with naming them one after the other. I'm going to try out that for formula. We have equal to, the first cell is B3. Rather than naming all other cells, I'm going to put plus sign, then use a range for the remaining cell. That's B4 to B7, and now hit on the enter. You'll notice it has a hash value error. I intentionally did this to tell you that though range name work effectively with function, it might not work effectively with formulas. We talked about 4 cell reference while we're treating 3 of them here: relative, absolute, and mix. We have sales report 2016 for the first quarter. I want to sum the total sales made by Eric Dokumbo equal to sum open parentheses. I could highlight over the cells that I want to sum to automatically insert the range, and close my parentheses, Ctrl Enter, so it sums it to be 97. Double click on the fill handle and the result applies for the respective rows. If I click on cell E4, you'll notice the formula B4 to D4. If I click on cell E5, you will notice that it sums the cells B5, C5 and D5. If I click on the next cell, it sums the cells B6, C6 and D6. This is relative reference, where it relates to each row or column when a formula is copied. For absolute, I have equal to sum, open parentheses, highlight over the cell I want to sum, close parentheses. This range here is relative. To make it absolute, I'm going to put a $sign before the column letter and a $sign before the row number. I can do this individually by putting the $sign before the column letter and $sign before the row number. I can do it automatically by highlighting the range and clicking on the function key F4. It does that automatically for me. Hit on Ctrl Enter. Once I double click the fill handle to copy down, you observe that it didn't change like the relative. The sum for each row appears to be the same. We're going to look at each of the function one after the other. When I double click on F4, we have B4 and D4. If I click on cell F5, you observe we still have B4, D4. If I do so for other cell, you observe the same thing. The simplicity of what happened here, by placing the $sign before the column letter and the row number, we signal to Excel to constantly refer to those cells wherever the formula is copied. For mixed reference is quite different from absolute reference. Here we start out with equal to sum, open parentheses, highlight over the cell we want to sum. I'm going to apply the $sign on the column letters, close parentheses, Ctrl Enter. If I double click on the fill handle, the summation for each cell are relative. If I double click on the cell, we have the $sign on just the column letter, indicating that it should constantly refer to the column B, C and D, but the row are liberty to change. That's why we have it changing. But if you want the row not to change, rather than put the $sign before the column letter, I'm going to put the $sign before the row number. In this scenario, if I double click the fill handle, this is the position of my cursor. We have indicated that the column letter could differ, but the row number should be persistent to stay with data on row 4. After each of the summation done, we'll have the data referring to row 4. So this is how to work with relative, absolute and mixed reference. Range name. We have tried how to use a function in summing. Here we will apply the same. But rather than directly call out these cells, we're going to apply a range name. I'll highlight over the cells I want to apply range name and simply type a name for the range name. You remember that our range name should start with a letter and must not have space. I'm going to type Max as my range name, Ctrl Enter. When I want to sum here, I simply type equal to sum, open parentheses. Instead of putting the argument one after the other, I'm going to put what we call the range name. Our range name is Max. You must have observed that the data is automatically highlighted. Close my parentheses and I hit on Ctrl Enter. Assuming I click out here and I want to find out, oh, what are the range name I have and what is the name, I simply click on the drop down arrow against the name box and select Max, and it highlights my range name. 3D reference. We have data on formula sheet, cell reference sheet and range name sheet. We're going to sum them all in 3D reference sheet. We have equal to, I'll start out with sum, open parentheses, click on the formula sheet and select the data for January for Eric Tokumbo, apply a comma, then click on cell reference sheet and select January record for Eric Tokumbo and apply a comma, then click on range name sheet, select January record for Eric Tokumbo and close the parentheses, then hit on Ctrl Enter. Automatically the record across the sheet, formula, cell reference and range name are summed in 3D reference. I'll intentionally effect some changes in Eric Tokumbo on formula sheet, increase it to 100 and click on Ctrl Enter. If I go right to 3D reference sheet, you observe that the total has increased. Any suggestion, correction or comments that will help make this video interactive and informative is highly welcome. Kindly like or subscribe to this video. Thank you for choosing Max Tutorial.